Hello, this is I-5 The Heat Radio. We are here today. We have a special guest with us. We have a gentleman here who went against the school board and talked about the incident at the school with the police officer that dragged that young lady out of her desk. And today's going to be an interesting topic here before you. I do have one of my co-hosts with me today. James, are you there?
I am here.
That is great. So we're going to jump right in. And that gentleman I was speaking about is Craig Khanwell.
Yes,
how are you doing today?
Well, I'm a little under the weather with sinusitis, but I gave you my word that I will give you this interview. And,
that is fantastic.
Make my word bond.
Thank you so much. I understand that you've had several people come to you to interview you. You've turned a couple people down. How is that, and why did you do that?
Well, it wasn't a couple. It was ABC, NBC, CBS, all the networks here in Columbia, and CNN. Mm-hmm. And I decided against the interview because I thought that the focus needed to be maintained on the incident with the young ladies at Spring Valley High School rather than turning that focus to the person that pretty much went against, not necessarily against, but had something to say to the school board about the matter at hand.
Okay. Well, before we jump into that, just tell me more about yourself and different things that you've been involved with.
Well, I'm a father. I have a 24-year-old daughter, 21-year-old son. Very active in the community. Been that way since a young child. Went to college at South Carolina State University, played football there. Was very active in the Progressive Student Movement Association on campus. Member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Just been pretty much an activist for a while now. I work with the street organizations here in the city of Columbia to try to stem the tide of crime and violence, and to give them another opportunity, a way to pretty much come out of the lifestyle that they're in. What you have here in Columbia are street organizations. Individuals are very intelligent young men and women. They're not what they're purported to be in the media as just a bunch of thugs and ignoramuses running around, with no kind of intelligence in their head. You will find that most of them are very intelligent. They just need an opportunity to express their intelligence. So I like to work with those whom society deems as irredeemable. So I have a passion and a love for my people and all oppressed people. And that gives me the strength to stand when others maybe won't.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. I understand that you're also Omega Psi Phi?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you have been in several articles online speaking about Christmas and boycotting Christmas. An article about Farrakhan appeal to the streets organizations to make peace. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that.
Well, but the Minister Farrakhan, Dominique Farrakhan was supposed to come to Charleston, South Carolina, and at the Trident Technical College. However, there were forces that worked vigorously against that happening. So we scheduled a private meeting with the minister and the street organizations in Charleston. But since he didn't come to Charleston, since that was postponed, well, we asked the minister, could we have a private webcast with him and the street organizations in Columbia, Charleston, and Greenville, of which he agreed to do. So he spoke privately with them via webcast. And because I was one of the organizers of that, I was featured in the Final Call newspaper, which is the newspaper organ of the Nation of Islam that is distributed throughout America to millions of people. And because of that, I've been in the paper with the street organizations, showing love and unity and trying to bring us all together to establish peace in the community rather than chaos.
Okay. And you also talked about being a role model.
Well, I think that, all of us as adults should be role models. I would consider myself the epitome of manhood, but I try to give a good example of manhood. There are plenty of men, black men in our community, who are doing the right things by black children, by black women. We're not what society purports us to be as just a bunch of unthinking, savage Negroes. There are a lot of brothers out here who are really on the grind, who are really trying to improve the quality of life of their women, their children, and their neighborhoods. So I'm just one of many that's just trying to do good.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wow. Well, I applaud you.
Thank you, sister.
So let's go ahead and jump into the major topic, which is Spring Valley School and the officer who dragged that little girl around like a rag doll. I have my own opinion, but I'm not here to speak. So I would like to hear how you feel about it. How could it have been handled? How could it have been prevented? What do you think?
Well, one of the major issues that can concern that particular incident, I'm not here to say that the young lady was right by not obeying the authority in the class, the teacher, or the administrator. I'm not here to make excuses for that. But however, as an adult, no child should be handled in that manner. There is no excuse for the SRO or any other male adult to grab a 15-year-old child by the neck, pull her out of her chair, and pick her up and throw her across the room. He could have broken her neck, he could have killed her. There has to be another way of doing that. But these kinds of incidents have been taking place all across the country, not just in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. These incidents have been taking place all throughout America, with police officers or law enforcement handling black people as if we are cattle, still in chattel slavery. And that was the tipping point for me, to see a young woman picked up like that, slammed to the floor, and thrown across the room, and other black males sitting around like we are in the movie The Butler, when the guy came and just took the man's wife and raped her in the doggone cottage, and other black males just standing around looking. And this is the kind of stuff that was done during slavery. And those black males are sitting there watching this without even trying to intervene. We have become so conditioned to allowing oppression and suppression by white authority to the point that even when they're wrong and unjust, we sit idly by and watch it. That kind of insanity, it just has to stop in my book. So when I saw that, I thought of my own daughter. I thought of my own nieces. I thought of those whom I love deeply. I thought of friends who have children, who are daughters. And you can say, and we can say, well, she should have just obeyed and listened and been compliant. But every teenager has a bad day. If you were a teenager, I was a teenager, we all had bad days. So what if my daughter was in that classroom? Yes, she's used to submitting to authority, but maybe one day she might have a bad day in class and just do something totally out of character. And if she did that, I wouldn't want some white cop or black cop or any man coming in there and picking her up and slamming her to the floor and throwing her across a room without there being some serious consequences behind that. And so me as a man, as a father, I don't give a doggone who you are, whether you black or white. You wouldn't touch my child in that manner without some serious consequences behind that.
That's correct. I think that color plays a major part in this. The reason why I say that is because had it been the other way around, if it was a black cop who slammed a white girl onto the ground, he would have lost so much in an instant.
Right.
So for them to downplay this, they downplayed it because the person was black. The victim was black. And they look at us as being so strong and that we can fend for ourselves and we can take any kind of abuse. We'll stand up and we'll be fine. But if it was the shoe was on the other foot, it wouldn't be the same outcome.
That black cop would have been fired that day. His life would have been threatened, if not taken.
Absolutely.
And that just wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have been a discussion.
Right.
There wouldn't have been no investigation to see what the parameters surrounding that event. He would have been gone. And we know that. They know that. That's why you don't have black cops grabbing white children and slamming them to the ground, particularly a female, in schools across this nation. But this kind of stuff is played out all across this country. We don't like to bring up race, but race is a factor. It's an issue in this country. And until we talk about it without being mincing our words, without trying to placate others. We have to speak truth. Whether the truth is liked by those in power or not, we have to speak it. And because we as a people have somehow gotten to the point in history where we think it's more pliant to be nice than to be right and exact, then we are taking things upon us that we shouldn't take.
Right.
You know, we're putting up with incidents in this country that's taking place that we shouldn't put up with. No self-respecting person should ever have to be disrespected to gain respect.
Right. And race is going to continue to be a major part of all of this until we talk about it, like you said. And once we address it and it can go away and we can all just be one, that would be a beautiful thing. I'll wait for the day. Maybe I might not see it. I don't know. But I'll wait for the day. My family being as mixed up as all get up. I love seeing mixed couples. I love seeing black and black couples. I love it all. I think it does not matter what color you are. But that's through my eyes. You have racist cops who don't see things how I view things. And they mistreat people based on their color, and they get a slap on the wrist. I think is disgraceful.
I think people are losing their humanity, and I mentioned that in the diatribe that I had with the school board. That I wouldn't grab a white child like that. I wouldn't grab a little white girl and throw her across the room. I wouldn't do that. That's inhumane. That's insane. So why would I do that to anybody's child? I wouldn't want that done to my child. If we live by the premise of treat every human being the way you would like to be treated, then we wouldn't have these kind of problems. But sometimes we get in positions of authority, and we think that we are the author of the person's lives whom we are charged with serving and protecting.
Right.
But we are not the author of their life. We are put in authority to make sure we serve and protect them in the best manner. But serving and protecting had nothing to do with that incident. That was strict brutality.
Oh, yeah.
That could have resulted in that young lady's death. Why? Because she didn't want to give up her phone? So she deserves that kind of treatment because she didn't want to give up her phone? Yet I'm supposed to sit by as a father and as a man and look at this and not feel enraged about it? No, it's not nice. I didn't intend to be nice because that incident was not nice. And unfortunately, we as black men, we don't want to be seen as the angry black man. We want to be seen as someone that we can talk to and he's someone that we can reason with. I was reasonable, but I was passionate and intense. And I wanted them to see that intensity because that intensity has increased in black men all across this country by the abuse that we see happening to black women, black children, and ourselves that has been unjust. And that was, if the young lady was in there threatening the class with a weapon, I can understand that.
Right.
But that young lady was sitting down, being quietly defiant. Yes, she was defiant, but she was quietly defiant. She was not disrupting the class. When they asked her to leave, she didn't say anything. Mm-hmm. She just sat there. Why throw her and slam her on the floor and throw her across the room? That is insanity to me. So there's no way in the world that can be justified in my eyes. That cannot be justified in the eyes of the divine. I don't see how we can try to justify that ourselves. So the fact that police officer just got fired, that's mercy from God.
Right.
He just got fired. He didn't lose anything else. He just lost his job.
Right. And like what was once said, if it was the other way around, it would have been so much more loss on the officer's part. So, but...
Pardon my passion. I do get passionate. I did.
James, you want to add anything?
Of course.
You say something.
I definitely understand Craig's passion. I understand his point. And I was taking some notes while he was talking. The way I look at it is that we're looking at the wrong issue here, okay? Number one, I see the incident differently than he sees the incident. I did not see an officer who, because of the color of this person's skin, decided that he was going to become a part of what's going on and grab her around the neck and slam her to the floor and throw her across the room. That's not just, I don't think that if you look at the film, that's what happens, okay? First off, we totally have ignored the facts and went straight to opinion and went straight to emotion. The facts are, this student disrupted class before any of this happened. The student disrupted class to the point that the teacher asked the student to leave the class. The fact that the student had a cell phone, was another part of this incident. The student disrupted the class. There's a protocol which has to happen when students are disrupted in class. All of that was followed. The teacher was patient with the student. The teacher pleaded with the student. The student decided to continue to ignore the teacher and make the classroom instruction disruptive. The teacher couldn't continue to teach. The teacher went on and got the administrator, who came in and said, "You're going to have to come with me." The administrator, again, talked to the student, tried to cajole the student. Why this is necessary, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to why this is necessary, which to me is unbelievable. Okay? But, once again, the student ignored the authority of both of those people who are in charge of not only taking care of that student, but they're in charge of every single student at the school. Those that are in the class, those that are not in that class, and there has to be, that schools are an environment for teaching and for learning. They're not a social experiment, okay? Once the student continued to ignore that, other students were now getting the point. And they weren't getting the point that this is not what we should do. This is normal. This has now become the standard. And that's a big issue, okay? Because they're seeing the way kids think are not the way adults think. Kids see, oh, I can get away with this. And so, being a child, they think like a child, act like a child. When they feel like something's not right, when they feel like they don't want to do, when they feel like they know what's going on, then they give the action that she gave. She was flat out wrong, period. We don't need to get into she was wrong, but. No, she was wrong, period. No but.
But.
No but. No but. She was wrong, period. The protocol then said, we've got to go and get the SRO. Was he walking down the hall looking for some student to slam? No, he was not. He was called in to get this student. Once again, before class could continue, he asked the student to leave with him. He told the student to leave with him. He told the student that if she did not comply, he was going to have to take her out of the class. He was not acting like a police officer at the time. A police officer doesn't go, "Will you please come with me? Come on, you've got to come with me. They've got to finish teaching." Now, because of his authority, he had every right to fit, not opinion, by law. She had now crossed over from being, by law, she crossed over from being a student to disobeying a lawful order, which meant she was now trespassing. She was actually now trespassing. With that being said, he went and physically attempted to remove her from class, of which she struggled against, okay? And what you saw on video was the result of her struggle with the SRO. That wasn't a result of the SRO manhandling a young girl who's sitting there being quietly defiant. That was her struggle. You know, I heard some other stuff about this being a black and a white issue. Be realistic. Racists are racist. It doesn't matter what their jobs are. You could be a banker, you could be racist. You could be a judge, you could be racist. You could be a teacher, you could be racist. You could be a cop, you could be racist. It's not we have these racist cops, we have these racist bankers. You have racists. Those people who believe that they have a superiority over a different race. All right? That's everywhere. So it could have been the teacher. And it's not confined to blacks or whites or Asians or Hispanics. Okay? There are people who believe that their race that they belong to is superior to other races. That is what a racist is. Okay? If the policymakers, those who are the board, who Craig Khanwell addressed, if the policymakers, and that is the role of a board to set policy, if the policymakers would give the authority of those who are in the administration to follow the policies that are made, and then they supported that, you will not have the standard in high school right now, the standard being disobedience. That's the standard. That is not the exception. You know what the exception is? The exception is an honors class, an AP class, or Duke tip, or academic and intellectual exception, or the ability to showcase your intellectual talent is not the exception. That's the exception. The standard is ignorance, disobedience, and uncaring. That's the standard. The standard in education has changed from excellence to ignorance. If the standard were still excellence, then you wouldn't need charter schools. You wouldn't need private schools. What we're going to find is that because the standard has changed and those who set the protocols won't engage them themselves and hold students to what the requirement is, you're going to have the same thing that happened in the late 60s and the early 70s. You're going to have the folks who want to gain an education leaving the public school system in droves for a disciplined environment of education, where that's the standard and not what this has become. What I saw wrong with what occurred in this specific incident was that the students in that class weren't removed from that class before he removed that student from her chair. That's what I saw wrong. And the reason I think that was wrong was because he came into the class with a weapon that could have discharged once any type of melee, occurred. That's why I see that's wrong. But if you think that him physically, which is actually a part of what he is allowed to do, was wrong, not only do I think it was not wrong, but number one, it wasn't illegal. If it were illegal, he would have been prosecuted for it. Now, you got civil and criminal actions. Are folks going to go after it civilly? Of course they're going to go after it civilly. When you go after something civilly, you're going after the money. Can you go after it criminally? No, you can't. The civil action that's going to take place is they're going to go after what I just said, the money. They're going to go after the school district because they're going to say that the policy is unreasonable, that the policy of having SROs at school is unfair and has been administered unfairly. Once these folks leave, let's let's see how many of the students stay.
But one thing I would like to add
Mm-hmm.
is that she didn't disrupt the classroom. That's what we can tell from what was videotaped. So, with having said that,
Mm-hmm.
the kids weren't taken out the classroom. I agree with you, because maybe the kids should have been taken out of the classroom because he does have a weapon for their safety because of him entering the classroom. It wasn't that the kids, they made it seem as if the kids needed to leave the classroom because she was being disrupted. She wasn't being so disrupted that
you saw.
That we saw.
Remember,
But hold on a second.
when you talked to administrators prior to that, this was not about a cell phone. Class had not even been able to begin.
But hold on a second.
Okay.
But with saying that, from what we can tell, she wasn't going after anybody in the classroom. She wasn't pulling anybody's hair. She wasn't doing anything.
That's not the standard. That's not the standard.
My whole point is,
Okay.
if she was being so disrupted,
Mm-hmm.
and the teacher couldn't get her up, and the guidance counselor couldn't get her up, and now they introduced the cop into the environment, and he can't get her up. What they need to do next, before they even entered the cop into the situation, they should have called her parents. It shouldn't have gone that far. And for him to have handled her, and I said her, because it was a female, the way he did was unacceptable.
Two things. Number one, you cannot call the parents every time a child is being disruptive. You cannot. Many of the parents, and we all know now what her parental situation is, but many parents cannot be called on their job. When you set policy, it has to be across the board, okay, for every situation, for every student. Calling parents is not a policy. You're going to go through calling parents while you're trying to teach. Number one, students are told this is what the behavior is we're requiring while you're in class. This is what this is what the behavior we expect. Number two, they're being given, they're told, and you're given the policy manual. If you do not comply, these are the things that will happen. You can be suspended, you can get this, you can be expelled, it goes down the line.
You're not going to get thrown to the floor and thrown across the room. That is not the policy.
My point is,
you can expand, you can suspend the floor. Yes, he did.
She lurched in her desk, grabbed her desk, and that caused her to go to the floor. He went to pick her up, not throw her down. He went to pick her up, not throw her down. I saw what you did, but if you watch it slowly, he did not come over there, slam her down. He did not.
He grabbed her by the back of her neck.
Yes.
Of course, if you grab anybody,
Exactly what you did. You went to pick her up. Remember now, go back and look at it. She had her arms in her hands clamped down on the chair. She had her legs clamped on the side. And I'm going to tell you right now, that made it unstable.
And if she is that clamped to a desk, then at that moment, like what you said, I don't agree. Parents shouldn't be called at every drop of the hat kind of situation. But a situation like this where it's about to get physical between a cop and your child, no. Before it even gets that close.
This is what's going to happen. Because we can skirt away the racial dynamic of this country all we want to.
But I don't think we did.
Okay, but the public has. And if this continues to happen, you're going to have a parent come out there and kill a cop. Or get killed trying to kill a cop.
Absolutely.
You cannot. No, I'm one of those. I'm a straight shooter. I don't hear this on the radio because they need to hear it.
Right.
What's going to happen if somebody's child get grabbed in that manner? Whether they think that child is wrong or not, that parent's going to think, why didn't you call me?
Right.
Because I have children. When my children were in high school, everybody in that school had my number. All their teachers had my number. Because I made it clear, if my children get out of line, you call me or their mother. You're not going to be handling my child in any kind of way. Yeah, if he's a threat to the school, then you deal with that. But if he's just being foolish, or she just being foolish, or being disobedient to the point where you can't handle it, I'll handle it. But the fact of the matter is, even if the parent is not like me, or you, or sister here, you don't have a right as a man to grab nobody's child like that. You just don't have that right.
Let's
Expel my child to spank my child, but don't physically attack my child.
Let's say that with your child. Okay, let's say that with your child. The school cannot, by law, bring you into that class and ask you to handle a situation. The school is liable for you. We don't know whether or not we call a parent in there, they've had issues with the child, then they come in there and attack the child. Are you aware of the fact that certain parents may beat their child?
It'll be better than a cop doing that's what my parent can't go into the school. I go visit my children every time.
Okay, when you go visit your child, because I know for a fact this has happened, and the child has been disruptive, and the parent comes into school and says, let me handle, I'm going to be the neighbor. Ma'am, wait a minute. In fact, I just got a call from a friend of mine who works in the school saying he's told me this happened. Ma'am, you cannot do that here. Well, let me take him to the bathroom. Ma'am, you can't do it here on our school grounds. They are liable. So see, although you want to think that you can handle it there, you can't. If your child shoplifts in a store and you come up to the small child, not a bigger child, but the child shoplifts in the store, and you go up to and they hold that child, and you say, listen, I will take him from here. And they say, no, you cannot. You're like, wait a minute, it's my child. I can do what I want to. Ma'am, once your child did this act, they are outside of your custody. They're in our custody. Once your child gets on that campus, they are outside of your custody. They are now in their custody.
What you said was a criminal act of stealing from the store.
No, it doesn't matter. I said he was there to take her. She is now going from being a student to being trespassing. There's a protocol that has to be followed. The school followed the protocol. If you don't like the protocol, then you have to get the school board to change it. And my question was, once they change it, then what? Then what are you going to do? You're going to end up taking the kids out of school because you're going to find more, not some, not the first time, but more students being beaten, more students being raped, more teachers being beaten, and then there will be no one there. No one. There are 3,000 students at Spring Valley High School. Mm-hmm. Okay? There's probably 300 teachers, if that. Many of them are female. Now, once chaos takes over, there will be no, what am I going to do now? How do we stop it? You can't. If the SRO is not there, who's going to step in when there's a fight between two 6'5" football players? Who? A teacher?
But we're not talking about two football players.
No. We're talking about the effect of what will occur if you were always saying, why was the police officer there?
In that situation. I'm not saying don't have police on campus. I'm saying in that situation, handling a little girl, I don't care if she's 6 foot. She's a girl. She's not even a woman. You do not handle a girl in such a manner. That is unacceptable. And like Craig has said, if it was my child, I am going after that cop. That's just real. That's just real talk.
I think James is addressing an issue dealing with the public school systems across the country. In terms of the lack of discipline.
This particular issue, which you had a disobedient student who went through the protocols that were set, all of which were deemed legal.
Slavery was legal.
Okay?
Slavery was legal.
Was.
Shit. And some people still trying to make it legal. Did you see this in my hometown recently, they just brought up on federal charges a mentally impaired black man working for them for years that they was treating like a slave. Federal charge. That's in the paper today. Right. So slavery still exists if people are allowed to do it. And this is the same incident. This man acted like an overseer. He didn't act like an officer. He acted like some slave catcher that he was going to treat this young girl like a chattel slave. There's no way in hell he would have grabbed a white child like that. A white young lady. Let me finish. Who's committing slavery? I always let you finish when you talk, so let me finish. He would not, in no way in hell he would have grabbed a white child like that, a white young lady like that, and slammed her to the floor. I would give a dog if she was fighting him back. There's no way he would have did that to her, and then pick her up and throw her across the room, leaving her with a gash across her forehead, an injured neck, and an injured shoulder. Could have broken her neck. There is no way in hell a black cop would have done it. There's no way in hell a white cop would have done it. Show me, and find on the internet that you see a black cop treating a white girl like that, or a white cop treating a young white girl like that. Find it on the internet. The internet gets tapped into all of these issues across the country. You can't find it. I'm sorry that exists. No, you can't. These people walk around in some of these blue uniforms, and I told Sheriff Locke that at the first race summit and community policing summit that Sister Mia McLeod had. And I talked to him, Skip Holbrook, and there was a slave agent there and probation parole. I said, you have officers in your department that you know are racist as hell. And I said it just like that. You know are racist as hell, but you're not trying to uproot them out of your department. Eventually, that's going to cause a problem in this city, and like it's causing a problem across this country. You're going to end up having Ferguson's here in South Carolina. You're going to end up having Baltimore's here in South Carolina. What do you want? So my point was to the school board, what do you want us to do? How do you want us to handle this with the rage that's building up in black men across this country, seeing our men, women, and children being disrespected by unjust law enforcement and being shot down with no weapons, being brutalized, swimming in a damn swimming pool? What do you want from us? You want us to continue to watch you put your knee in the back of our children's neck? A 14-year-old child on the ground they did at that lady at this pool party? You want us to continue to watch this and do nothing? What do you want? You're not going to get that. So the best thing that you can do as an enforcer of the law is to be wise in your practice of enforcing that law. You don't have to treat nobody like a damn animal just because you have the power and authority to arrest them. That is ridiculous. This is what's going on across this country, James. And I'm saying this out of passion because I see what's coming. Right. There are a lot of you finish. There are a lot of black men in this country, brother. We've killed, we've had it, we've snapped. And what's going to end up happening, you're going to see a loss of life on a scale unimaginable on both sides. And that's what people are going to say, hey, wait a minute. Right. We didn't realize this was happening. I'm just a warning. You may not like the warning, may not like the passion of my spirit and how I say it, but that is, I am warning them. And I'm warning you and us. If we continue to allow this happening, we're going to have mass loss of life on both sides because we're not going to continue to take this anymore. We're not going to do it. Now, there's some things that we have to do to correct the public educational system that has to happen. But in this instance, and instances across this country, this trap has got to stop. Our lives are going to be lost on both sides.
And like what just Craig just said, is it is the honest to goodness truth. When the other races start noticing that African American people are not going to take this, the generation that's growing up today are not like our generation. They're not going to take. They're going to be like, what? And they're not going to take no mess. They don't care about getting shot or losing their life. If you're going to treat them any kind of way, they're going to fight back. They don't care. But my whole point is, it's not going to be visible to Caucasians or other races that treat African American people wrong until there's a mass group of them losing their lives. When they lose their life, then they're going to take a step back and be like, hold on a second. What can we do to go ahead and fix this problem? But when it's more African American people losing their lives, they're not going to look at it. They're going to sweep it under the rug and say, oh, okay, Well, no, that person was this way, and this person had problems in school, so that's why they robbed the convenience store, or that's why they had an attitude, and they're going to try to make excuses for them having a bad day, as you say. Somebody else can have a bad day, and they go ahead and say, oh, you're having a bad day, and it'll be just that simple. But as soon as an African-American person have a bad day, it's time to kill them.
If we would focus the same anger that you both just displayed there, 90%, not the 10% that you're talking about dealing with right now, okay, because that's what that is, the 90% of the deaths, that will not occur. If you want to focus on the 10%, focus on the 10%. And what you're going to get is still the mass wholesale destruction of our people by our people.
Now, I agree with you on that because I'm just as passionate about that as I am about this. That's why I work with 90-10. That's why I work with them. You don't see me when I'm talking to street organization. I'm just as passionate about that as I am about this. I am just as adamant about us stopping killing one another because that is insanity. We have to fight a war on two fronts as black people. We got to fight the destruction of ourselves by ourselves, the self-genocide that we're practicing amongst ourselves, and what I believe to be the genocide by others outside of ourselves. So I think we're fighting a war on two fronts. I agree with you on that, brother. We have to stop this insanity on all fronts.
There were so many different topics in this segment tonight, and we will continue this. This will be a continuation. Final words, Craig.
I think that talking with James always adds breadth and depth to my own thinking. He's a very intelligent man. He gives sound arguments, and he's a very reasonable human being. We disagree on certain issues and policies and the way our people have been affected in America, but we're brothers. And I think that what black people have to understand and learn how to do is to disagree with one another without being disagreeable. I think that every one of us have a right to our opinion. Every one of us have a right to how we see life and view life based on our personal experiences. So I don't think we should throw any of us away, because all of us add value to this struggle that we're in for humanity. So I appreciate James. I appreciate his passion. I appreciate yours too, sister, even though we don't agree on everything. But what we do agree on, we can work together on. And I think as a people, we must learn how to work together on things that we agree on. And the things that we don't agree on, we can dismiss that and move forward on other things and other issues. But I love my brother, I love you, sister, and I will never allow my disagreement with another brother or sister to cause me to be their enemy, because it's a disagreement.
Absolutely. That is a wrap for our show tonight. You are listening to I-5 The Heat. You can find us a number of ways. We are mainly on Facebook, where you can find all of our connections. So go to facebook.com/I5 The Heat. If you want to email us about maybe some show topics, that would be fantastic. Our email address is i5theheat@gmail.com. Tonight's show was fantastic, and it is a continuation of what's to come. Many topics that we can address as far as race and how we need to come together. We will be back next week. I-5 The Heat Radio.
This is a story about a little girl walking home from the grocery store one sunny afternoon. I want you to picture this little girl. Suddenly a truck races up. Two men jump out and grab her. They drag her into a nearby field. And they tie her up. And they rip her clothes from her body. Now they climb on. First one, then the other. Raping her. Shattering everything innocent and pure. A vicious thrust. In a fog of drunken breath and sweat. And when they're done, after they've killed her tiny womb, murdered any chance for her to bear children, to have life beyond her own, they decide to use her for target practice. So they start throwing full beer cans at her. They throw them so hard that it tears the flesh all the way to her bones. Then they urinate on her. Now comes the hanging. They have a rope. They tie a noose. Imagine the noose coiling tight around her neck. A sudden blinding jerk. She's pulled into the air and her feet and legs go kicking and they don't find the ground. The hanging branch isn't strong enough. It snaps and she falls back to the earth. So they pick her up, throw her in the back of the truck, drive out to Foggy Creek Bridge, pitch her over the edge. She dropped some 30 feet down to the creek bottom below. Can you see her? Her raped, beaten, broken body, soaked in their urine, soaked in their semen, soaked in her blood, left to die. Can you see her? I want you to picture that little girl now imagine she's white.